important discussion that we're going to be having and listening to information as presented by all the department heads. And I know, Martin, you weren't here last year when we went through this, but this was sort of the introduction to how the budget is put together. So hopefully this will be a very good resource meeting for you. There are so many moving parts, and it's really hard to get a handle on everything that's going on. But I think sitting through this and hearing all of this information will help all of us to make better decisions when we're working on the city budget. For me, I think it boils down to maybe 3 questions as we move forward. We're not making decisions on anything today. We're just taking information in and trying to absorb what is needed, what our needs are. But we have to establish at some point, and we'll have ongoing discussion about this, what are our priorities? And do we have a plan? If not, how are we going to get there? And as council representatives, what is the mark that you want to leave on our city? How are we each going to leave it better than we found, better than when we came in? And that varies for everybody. So that's going to take a whole lot of discussion. And so this will be the first of many meetings that we have as we make our way to budget approval. You know, everybody has their own priorities. Some people want a cleaner city. And so, you know, one of your priority questions might be, how are we going to make our city cleaner? Or, you know, there's been a lot of talk about boats, campers, RVs in the past. And that might be on somebody's mind. So as we listen to all of this and take all these presentations in, think about what your priorities are and make a list. I said this back in November, and I think it's real important that we write them down, whatever they might be, write them down, and then we can all have dialogue and talk about them. And then come to some consensus as a group that these will be our top group priorities. We may still have some other individual ones, but we need to come as a group and have whatever that plan is going to be. So that's really all I have to open this. Ben, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you all for being here. I wish I could say it's going to be a short day. It is going to be a long day. We'll make sure we take breaks. The staff are here. They're here to answer any questions you may have. The presentations are styled based on showing what we're accomplishing now that's going to carry through this budgeting process, because you're setting the stage for FY25. So you're like, okay, we just finished this one budget, we just started, we have lots of projects that are moving forward based on the last strategic direction and the strategic plan and the budget that was approved by council. So what staff's going to do today is talk about those initiatives that are underway, so you know what we're working on to complete this fiscal year. Some may carry into next fiscal year, but then hopefully set the stage for what's next. So they want to paint that picture for you all, what's going on in the city. You know, it looks like it's really early in the budget process, right, to really start going too far out there, but we can start trying to identify what does council want to see accomplished in the FY25 budget. And that's the big part of this. Staff are here to help frame and make sure we understand what we're trying to do. Because of the way the election cycle works and the way the budgeting process works, it's always that awkward carryover, right? So Councilman Baird, when you started, you inherited the strategic plan that was already directed by the previous council. So in this case, Councilwoman Burton, you're going to be help framing one that's going to go beyond your term, and that's the life cycle of it. But you each will have 3 opportunities to drive strategic planning. You will each have 3 opportunities at least to approve a budget. And so that's the handoff between those. It also adds for that continuity of it. But again, once May, June gets here, there will be at least one new council member. That's the challenge for me and my team, is to catch them up quickly, right? It happens fast. So welcome to council, here you go. Here's a $186 million budget, let's talk through it. And so that's where this is critically important, is sure we're doing that continuity of the city to where it's a smooth handoff and we're aligned strategically for the future of the organization. So there's a lot to discuss today. Really proud of the team and what they're going to share today. You know, you already see some handouts sitting here, one of the biggest ones being your annual operating budget. That's huge. The amount of work that goes into this with Tammy and her team is incredible. They're in the middle of audit right now. So again, it never stops over there. So if you drive by City Hall, it's 8 o'clock and you see a corner light on, that's my finance team. That tends to be what they're doing almost every night, working hard to make sure the budget, which is behind the scenes, is working the way it's supposed to. But, you know, all the economic indicators for the city in North Texas, Farmers Branch, look like we're gonna have another good budget year. We don't see a cliff coming. We're always prepared though for something so we can have a soft landing. And that's the way the budget's built. We don't ever wanna have a budget that, oh my gosh, interest rates moved and we don't have enough money. We budget conservatively. We have stabilization funds. We have a good fund balance. We're prepared for a soft landing should something happen. But as always with the budget, there's an incredible amount of need. 20, 30 years out into the future, there's always going to be those needs, and how do we want to approach those? I'm assuming infrastructure will be a big discussion as we talk through that as well. We will have that as a separate discussion as part of the budget process. So CIP infrastructure, we will talk about that. We'll talk about the fee structures, and we'll also talk about debt and how that plays into the budgeting process. But here we are, it's a fun day. Again, lots of good presentations, and we start quick and heavy, so it'll be fun. So if unless y'all have any questions, we're ready to begin.
And I realize everybody here works. If you've got to get up and address something work-wise, do what you have to do. Okay. So, first up is topic number 1. We discuss critical business outcomes, and Troy Riggs is going to help us with that.
All right, well, good morning. Thanks for having me here today, Mayor and council members. It's an honor to be a part of this here at Farmers Branch. Just to start off, I'll get us caught up on time, I promise. So we'll move through some of these pretty quickly. Let me give you a little bit of background on myself since I came into this a little bit later than normal. I want to give you a little bit of understanding who I am, and also make available that if you have any questions for me in the future, feel free to reach out. The staff has all my contact information, and more than happy to help out at any time possible. But my journey in public safety began years ago in local government as a police officer, a raw recruit in 1989. It seems like forever ago. I guess it is in some respect. But I began as a police officer in Jefferson County, Kentucky. And Jefferson County is a county where the city of Louisville sits. And so we had most of the county that we patrolled. But as I progressed through the position in the police department and became public safety or public information officer, there was an election for a new judge executive. So Jefferson County has judge executives much like the structure here in the state of Texas. And the new judge executive was a young lady by the name of Rebecca Jackson. She won, was kind of an underdog, but she won anyway. She had a history in the city, but she ran on something that was unusual. She ran on merger of city and county government, because at the time city and county was fighting against each other for economic development dollars, and it was a big mess, and the city was trying to expand, the county was incorporating small cities around it. It was almost like a civil war within governments. And so she ran on this, and she was looking for someone to be kind of a pseudo chief of staff and someone to be her press secretary, and my name kept popping up even though I was a sergeant on the police department, and she lateraled me over to the judge executive's office. It was a blessing in my life. It was a great opportunity. I was in over my head, to be honest with you. I was 20-something years old, but we had to work on a marketing plan, lobby Congress. We had to lobby the State House to try to get a referendum and support. Long story short, that referendum passed. 2 years later, we were going to undergo a merger. And at that time, I found myself back in the police world as a lieutenant, and was selected to be the chief of staff for the newly formed Louisville Metro Police Department. We had 2 departments we were merging. It was the largest merger in the history of law enforcement at the time. So for 2 years, we worked every day, 12, 13, 14-hour days to merge governments. To show you how complicated it was, day 1, when I was chief of staff, I was dealing with 9 different unions. Day 1, we had lieutenants in one department making $10,000 more than lieutenants in another department. I mean, it was a undergoing of policies, procedures, and all the things we had to do. It was a great learning experience for me. From there, I moved to Corpus Christi, became a police chief. worked there as assistant city manager, was promoted to it, and then the city of Indianapolis came calling where I ran public safety, which was about 70% of the budget for Indianapolis. And after I was in Indianapolis, moved to Denver, Colorado, and worked for Mayor Hancock. The fun thing about my life is that I've had all these opportunities, and then when I was in Denver, the mayor told me he was getting ready to go work for Joe Biden, the new president. He ended up not doing that, by the way, but I didn't know that, so I took a job. If you're familiar with Torchy's Taco, I was the chief administrative officer of Torchy's Taco, and we saw a $400 million acquisition of Torchy's Taco during the pandemic, which was a great success for us as a staff. But then when the venture capitalists came in, they removed all of us. So there's only a couple people left. That's just what happens in business. And since then, I've been in South Texas. So my background is I've testified before Congress, met with presidents, U.S. attorney generals, and I've also overseen events like the Kentucky Derby, Ryder Cup, and the Indianapolis 500, which is the largest one-day sporting event in the world. So I've been very blessed with a lot that I've been able to do. So if there's anything in my background can help you in the future, feel free to call me. I'm here to help. I love getting involved with local government because my heart's in local government. I will probably get back in local government at some point in my career, but I'm grateful to be here today. As far as the ground rules today, I think the mayor and the city manager have laid those out. I always say, being respectful, and I know by just interacting with you all this morning, that is just a culture here. So that's good. But the other thing I'll remind you is we're getting ready to go over the CBOs in a minute. And I just want to remind you that as we're going through those, start thinking about what you would like to move forward, what you would potentially like to move forward for 2025 as far as something that you want to alter, maybe. You move it forward and alter it, change it some way. Maybe there's something you want to eliminate, or there's something new that you want to add. If you start thinking about those things now, it'll make our round, as we get to the end and we bring all this back together full circle, to make it a little bit easier at that point. What I would caution, though, is an individual that's been in government for years will have a lot of great ideas, but let's not make sure that we have so many ideas that we overwhelm the staff. Because even though you move something off of CBO, it doesn't mean that work isn't still continuing. So we have to be mindful of that as well. So here's the agenda for today. We'll go over the CBOs in a moment. I have staff presentations and critical business outcomes, as I just spoke about, for 24 and 22, and then we'll talk about next steps with the leadership here in the room. Here's the strategy map, and I will tell you that as I was trying to get up to speed, and thank you to everyone that helped me, but as I was getting up to speed, I was really impressed by the focus areas, the serving our customers down to promote learning and growth. There's a lot there. I like it because it's simple for employees to look at and understand. It's good for your business community, those in economic development, to look at and understand. And I've been dealing with a lot of different cities throughout my career, and I will tell you, this is one of the most organized that I've seen, and especially just the budget cycle that you have on the board over there. I think that is perfect. Matter of fact, I had someone call me and say, hey, can you recommend a city to look at how they organize? And after seeing this, I said, you need to look at Farmers Branch and see how they're doing it. Don't try to replicate it completely, make it your own, but you need to see how they think in the process that works through. So here's our business outcomes, or critical business outcomes, that we are going to go over here in a moment. And I'll go through these. You're very familiar with these. I'll try to go through these fairly quickly, just so we can get a little bit back closer to our time frame. But CBO 1, ensure strategic planning alignment of the current mission status and the mission in the city and mission vision. And for the reasons we just talked about, this is important. And when you can be able to see this and work on it, here's a few of the things that are being done right now. Let me just say this, the council member and I were talking earlier. When you're having conversations about strategic planning and alignment, and you're having it internally, there's a whole different language sometimes, right? If you dig deep. Here's what I would recommend as you go through this process. What is it that you're trying to accomplish? How do you communicate that internally to your employees and team members? How do you communicate that externally? That should always be in the back of the mind when you're looking at these CBOs, is how do you communicate internally and how do you communicate externally? But the reality is, whatever you say has to be similar, but sometimes how do you make it a little bit easier for people that's in the community that don't deal with these things every day to understand what you're trying to accomplish? That will move the city faster, further, if you have that group that's on board. The other thing I'll talk about probably at different times, and this is kind of the nerdy part of me, so I apologize for this, but there's a thing called the Ebbinghaus curve, and what it says is that if you're not communicating your vision and strategic planning constantly on a regular basis, that when you roll it out, people know 100% of it. I don't think they'll remember 100%, but they're pretty close to 100%. After 30 days, they only remember like 20 or less %, and that's your workers, much less the community. So that's why that communicating to the public is so important to ensure that people know where you are right now and where you're headed in the future. Improving access to responsible and diverse housing. That's key for economic development, economic growth. I think we all know that and the importance of it. Plan to build and maintain high-quality public assets. Let me just say this, I see that, there's going to be a lot that's outward-facing, but when I was with Torchy's, one of the things that we were grappling with is with a limited workforce today, how do you retain individuals? And what's happening in the studies that we saw in the private sector is that people go and work, or they go somewhere because they want to live there, then they find a job, and then they want a job that they find fulfillment. And they find a place that people are investing in them. And seeing that you're investing in people helps with you retaining employees over a long term as well. And I don't know if you've thought about that as you're doing your regular maintenance and keeping those high quality public assets, but it really does matter not only to the public, but it matters to your team members as well, who are looking for a sense of belonging and a place to work. I was reading a study recently that said that with the drop in the decline of people going to faith-based organizations or churches in general, more people are looking for fulfillment in work, and the more that you can invest in them, the more likely they are to stay with you long-term. Support the evolution of the arts, culture, and recreation. That's CBO number 4. Back to my time in Louisville, Kentucky, when I was a teenager, this is going to demonstrate a little bit how old I am. When I was a teenager, the city of Louisville had a pretty thriving arts community, and they got involved even more, and they built an arts complex, and shortly after it opened, they had the presidential debate between Walter Mondale and Ronald Reagan. And since then, Gorbachev's been there, generals, leaders have been there, they've had numerous Broadway shows, and today that complex brings in about $300 million a year to the city. The reality is, though, for people that live in Louisville, that's a driver. For companies that are coming to Louisville, it's something that we used to pitch for economic development. For companies that are in Louisville trying to attract talent, they pitch that now for talent to come in. So it's good to see that you are focused on those things here in the city. CBO number 5, strategically identify and acquire property to further the goals of the city. Neighborhood revitalization program. I was in, and I know I'm going through this quickly, I want to get us back on time, but I do want to share this. I was in a group the other day, and they were talking to city managers that were retired. And they were all sharing war stories, but one question that they asked them was, and these were successful city managers, they retired on their own. And they said, asking the question, what is the one thing that you would do different if you were still in that position? And almost everyone said, we would buy more land. We would buy land, or we would, where we needed infill, we would buy that land because that helped us with economic development. And even the people that bought tremendous amounts of land still said they should have bought more land. So I just wanted to share that with you. I thought that was something interesting I just heard 2 weeks ago. And last, improve overall targeted community engagement. This is so important. I love that this city talks about community engagement. When you go to other cities, they'll talk about community programs. The problem with programs is that it has a beginning and an end. Engagement is a long-term relationship. So I love the idea of seeing what the police and fire are doing here in the city. So with that said, let's go ahead and move on to staff presentations. I believe the fire chief is up first, and as we talk about public safety. Any questions or any comments before the fire chief comes forward? Okay, thank you. All right, chief, thank you, sir.
Well, good morning, Mayor and Council and staff. We're excited to be here. Fire's always excited to be here. Y'all know that. And trust me, Troy caught us up so I could take the rest of the time this morning. Just kidding, Mayor. Don't worry. Everybody's freaking out. There's a timer down here somewhere.
You guys,
Councilman Mayor over here raising his hand too long. But no, we're here. We got 3 topics we're going to speak about today. There's 3. As you know, in fire, we don't do anything alone. Police, they ride around in cars by themselves. It takes 2 of us, though, to do the job, at least 2, if not 4. And so that's why you'll see up here Assistant Chief of Operations Shannon Langford here with me today to speak about the 4896 schedule. 2 is better than 1. That's why we do that in fire. So that's what we're going to do today. So we're going to kind of do a split presentation between Shannon and myself, but I would talk about 4896 schedule. This is something we've been talking about, y'all heard from me, the last 3 years. So as interim fire chief and our fire chief for the last 3 years, it's a topic we've been discussing at the last strategic retreat at the Trade Hunt. This was a topic we discussed, and what we explained is it was something that was on our priority, just kind of down the bottom. Well, we finally got there. And so it's something we've been working about, and we're excited to share it with you today.
So to give you a little bit of background about the 4896, it's not a new thing. It's been happening across the country since the early 1990s. It's just reached the Metroplex probably around 8 to 10 years ago. Some cities started trialing it and doing some pilot programs, but it's a relatively new thing in the Metroplex, but across the country it's proven. So the decision was made several years ago, the discussion began several years ago that we would start looking at a 4896. As you all know, in the fire department, we've had lots of staff changes and lots of other programs that we started. So we put it on the back burner to get some of our programs up and running and fix some other programs. And then once it was the right time, then we decided to go on and look at it further this year. Some of the cities that have implemented it is the cities like Richardson, Grapevine, McKinney, Flower Mound, just to name a few. Several of the mid-cities cities have done it, and Prosper, I think, is the latest city to start it just this month.
So as Shannon just talked about there, you can see that we're not at the forefront on this. We're not going to do something we try to do. We try to walk before we run. As a city, I know that as a staff and as our city management, as a council, we do something in fire leadership. It's good to be, innovative, but we also want to see things play out. So as Shannon spoke about there at the end of his slide, we had reached out to these fire administrations. This was taking us time. We wanted to see how it play out. And so we've got a lot of success stories in that. And so that takes us to what is a 4996 schedule. It's very, I know y'all are smart individuals, but right now we're currently on a 24/48, speaking to hours. So 1 day on, 2 days off. The easiest way to explain that. So now what we're doing is we're going to be switching to this in October, working with our one team with HR and finance, city management, and IT as well to get a collective effort to do this. But we'll be doing 2 days on and 4 days off. And we'll get into the reasons behind that. But it's a very simple schedule to understand, and it's going to be really great for our staff in our city.
So why should we switch to this type of a schedule? First and foremost is more time with your family. Our traditional 24/48 schedule has worked effectively in most cities in the Metroplex for decades. But studies were done back in the 90s when they first began the 4096 to see something more effective for the families of the firefighters and spend more time at home. For instance, like weekends, if you were a 24-48 schedule, you get every third weekend, a full weekend home with your families. 4896, you obviously get a lot more. Some things that helps is being home those 4 days is a better sleep schedule, which improves your mental health and your physical health both, because you're actually at home, not being woke up or not just coming off shift and going home. You're actually at home more consistently with your family. Some things that we're looking at for our next year's budget in 24-25 is upgrading our dispatch module. It'll still be our existing one, but it's a different platform of it that we didn't implement initially. And it's where you can basically have a room remote in each room that you select your unit that you're on, and only your bedroom will go off if your unit is dispatched. And that helps us, especially in our stations that have multiple companies, like Station 1 is a truck company, an engine company, and a medic. So you aren't disturbed every time there's a call that goes off. In addition to that, there's a light that's integrated with the speaker that goes off in your bedroom, and it goes off prior to the tones, so it's better on your cardiac risk, and there's been studies done on that as well, as far as not jarring you out of bed when you get that call. So that's some things that we're looking at in the future to help with that sleep schedule, and this 49-6 schedule is kind of our first step to that. Continuity of business is another thing, which just having somebody here for 48 hours. Our current 24-48 schedule, they're here and then they're gone for 2 days, and then we don't see them again for maybe till the next week, because it might be on a weekend that their next shift falls. So this will be a little bit easier for us consistently having them here. It obviously increases morale, and Chief Latimer will talk about that here in a minute, as far as our staff wanted this. And we were lucky enough to move to a 4-day work week ourselves, and our staff brought this up to us a long time ago, as far as wanting to have something better for their life as well. And I think that they would have similar results that we've seen with the 4-day work week.
And so here what Shannon was getting us to was the survey results, as you'll see, the informal and formal. And so one of the things that y'all hear from our leadership and fire constantly, and we're at the works when you heard this, is we're hugely serving leadership. So we're constantly looking at how can we serve the person below us. And so one of these things, we've heard this from our operations department, as Shannon stated, for about 3 years, wanting us to look at this. And just developing leaders is our vision statement as well. And so what's neat on this slide, as you see, it's an informal survey. The results of that at 88.46% was a vote yes. That was done by one of the firefighters. And so we wanted this to happen. We wanted this organic growth from operations. We wanted them to take some ownership. So we didn't push them into it. We just kind of fed them along and let them know we're looking at it. And so they took it on themselves. And they started this survey. They ran a really good survey that we shared with other cities that was informal. And that's what gave us the percentage that we hear about, but they actually put it on paper to give the reasons why. At that point, we took that. I was sitting there speaking with Ben as we have our weekly meetings, letting him know what was going on, what we were going to pursue. And then once again, started collaborating with IT and finance and HR. Yoko was a huge help in her team on this to help us do a third-party survey. The way HR was the one going to be running it, not fire. That way we could actually see there was no good numbers. So we did a very simple one question. Do you want to go to the 4896 with a start time of 7 a.m., same start time? We weren't moving the start times. That's what we heard back. So before we sent the survey out, our leadership team went out to every shift. We met with every crew and said, here's what this survey is going to do. This is what we're looking at. And here's all the good, bad, and uglies to it, the pros and cons. We want you to know the whole picture before you vote. We did that to get a formal vote of 94.87%. And to our knowledge, that's the highest percentage that we've got back throughout the Metroplex, throughout the state, throughout the country was at 94.87%. So we had a huge vote for yes, which it showed us that we're doing a good job. That's what they want to do.
Okay, well, like a lot of other programs we do in the city, we do it together. So it's a one-team approach. Multiple departments collaborate with each other. In this particular program, fire administration, human resources, and city management collaborated to make sure that it was going to be budget neutral, There's no impact on the budget for this switch. There's no change to our FLSA cycle or our Fair Labor Standards Act cycle, so that doesn't change. And it's limited work on all of us at the end of the day.
With that, do y'all have any questions on the 4896 schedule, Mayor and Council?
Council? Dave, Council Mayor, you want to start?
Sure, I'll be happy to. Chiefs, thank you very much for the presentation. Hopefully Mike is picking this up. You know me, I'm trying to figure out how is this going to adjust, if any, the shift schedule from A, B, and C. And, you know, I think a simple chart of 7 days a week might have been a nice add to the presentation to show 2 days on and then the 4 days off, and then allows the next shift, A, starting with A, starting with B, starting with C. I think the idea of coverage, you guys have already covered that in the presentation, is still there. Shannon, you said, you know, little impact to the budget, the lift, if you will, of changing to this model is fairly straightforward, as you described with the shift. I think it's a smart way to move forward. It seems like it would be an attractive offering, amenity, if you will, or a work element here in the city as well. So those are my only comments, and I think it answers the question with the coverage to the community. Then this change doesn't change anything about the number of fire staff that are on at any particular time.
Correct.
So I think that's a very positive thing going forward. So thank you both.
Yes, sir. And to add to what you just stated, that's one of the things we've heard in our especially the last year in interviews, that especially when we put that out, they try to help us with the flyer, push that out. That was the reason we had over 100 people apply so quickly, was because they knew we were on 4996. They wouldn't have applied if they said, hey, we're not going to 4996, because that's where they're wanting to go. That's where we're all going to be on this at some point in time. Either going to be getting trained or not make it. So, and you're right on the calendar. That's something we'll be sure we add in the future. So thanks for that.
Thank you. You guys did great. I remember the presentation last year and the discussion when we were talking about all of this. I really like the idea that you guys are going to add the timers in the rooms, or the communication in the room with the lights, and changing that for your employees. I think that's significant for their health. Thank you.
Yeah, we noted that was one of the things y'all brought up to us last year, was sleep, and you also brought up mental, all of that came up, and that is that it's at 360 of mental illness. So thank you.
Captain Rowe?
So, is it all employees of the fire department that are going to be eligible for this, or just particular ones? I'm just thinking through administration as well as any new hires.
So yes, so we have 3 divisions, just so everybody understands how it works. Now y'all can do it if you're one of our CFA alumni, but we have 3 divisions. We have fire administration, fire prevention, fire operations. The largest is fire operations. That's what you think of as the fire department. And so it will be for all fire operations. So it will cover A shift, B shift, and C shift. So all 81 personnel will do that. So yes, sir. So as they come in, it's the same. This is per calendar. You're talking about, it's the same thing as we'll only have 3 shifts. So we'll have A shift, B shift, C shift. It's just how we have it orchestrated as far as 2 days on and 4 days off. So yes, sir. It'll be for all the personnel and fire operations.
And then, what about new hires? Are they, when someone joins and they don't have any experience in this industry, are they participating in this? Are they there all week? How would that work with them?
Very good question. Very good question. So how it works here for Farmers Branch fires, we only hire if you have a firefighter certification from the Texas Commission of Fire Protection, or in your paramedic certification as well. So they come in with having that. Also with the help of the lateral program, they have that experience. But we do put them through our week academy. And so we have a week academy that we put them through Assistant Chief Henderson. And he works with officers. So they come in their first week. We do an onboarding with the city, but also with our department. We go through all the basic stuff they're going to need to know. We have a very thorough checkoff that they have to complete on how we pull our clotheslines, how we do certain strategies and tactics. And then once they're signed off there, that week academy, they go into shift. And then they will then be on their 4896 starting in October 5th.
Okay. And you talked about you know, when you guys were talking about this, if there were some pros and cons and you evaluated both. You talked a little bit about the pros to this. What are some of the cons that you've found through your research process, and how are you addressing those?
Very, very good question. So one of the cons that we had, really not many cons on the operations side when we look from that view. One of the things we heard at the beginning was on the administration side, because where they are there for 48 hours, you can't fall into a time where now they work by 48 on their weekend. You might not see them, especially with their Monday through Thursday schedule. Again, so one of the things they said is, be sure you do not go to the schedule until you've built a very good culture. And so that's one of the reasons why we were waiting to build this culture that we have now, is because you have to have that communication, you have to have that engagement, because the operations chief, he definitely carried him and our EMS captain carried the most weight, because they're going to have that communication as far as with our battalion chiefs that they still do already on the weekend, just as their morning reports go through. Which is one of those things, that was the con. And so very good question on that. So that's how we overcome that. That's why we wanted to slow this thing down, because we wanted to build our culture first. We felt like we need to build our infrastructure, be sure everybody was, you know, on board. And that we had told that to our fire department that, hey, we're gonna focus on culture first, building our structure. When we feel like we're there, then we'll move on to these other things. And they proved that we are there.
Okay, that's it for me, thanks.
Thank you very much.
Hey Daniel, I'm gonna ask a couple things on this just to reinforce some things. Of the Quad cities, how many cities have confirmed they're moving to this schedule?
Just us.
Okay. And you've worked on this for multiple years, so thank you on that one. I know you've been the architect for that. And you are sharing your research with other cities that are trying to figure out how to move forward in this arena as well?
We've had many fire administrations and different people and firefighters and people reaching out, because there have been other cities go to it. The one thing that other cities did not figure out, and McKinney figured out right after we did, is how to get flooded neutral. And so that was one of the things that Shannon covered. Ben's thing to us was, you cannot go to this schedule if it costs us any money. So it took a little creativity and just doing a lot of research on our FLSA cycles, and we had just gone to the 28-day a few years ago, because we were trying to get our pay cycles correct with our new ExecuTime platform. And so we finally figured out how to do it. And it was a really simple thing. It was just how we started it. It's all about implementation, like anything. And so it's just how we implemented the schedule, and it didn't cost us any money. We didn't change our FLSA cycles or anything. So that's how we did that, which is now you're able to share that information with other fire departments to let them know they don't have to change their FLSA cycles. They don't have to go split millions of dollars into this to increase salaries and benefits. They can keep it budget neutral. So we have helped other cities at this point.
And just to reinforce, you know, anytime you're talking about recruitment and your number of applicants, before we announced this change coming, can you remind me of what the applicant pool change was from pre-announcement to once you announced we were moving to the schedule alignment?
Pre-announcement was, we had 38 applicants,
Okay.
and it went to 101 almost immediately after us announcing it that it passed.
So that's why I'm sure my counsel here is they made it budget neutral, which was the biggest thing I was after. It's easy to say we can fix it with money. It's a different thing to fix it without asking for more money, but the change on culture and impact has been dramatic. So I want to make sure you share this. This wasn't a simple, just we're going to change it. Lots of work, lots of effort, lots of energy, and incorporating all the key stakeholder departments, because it impacts HR, it impacts IT, it impacts everyone that's involved. So as a Daniel, I just want to make sure I covered a couple points as you've been through this journey over a couple years. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Chief,
Yes, sir.
I have one.
Oh, lovely. I'll answer it.
I was just waiting to let everybody else go. So, I'm concerned, has there been any study done by any of these other departments regarding the state of well-being, I'll just call it that, on the second 24 hours?
Yes, sir.
Because, you know, you just worked 24, now you're halfway in this day 2, and you're getting called out. And what I'm trying to get to, is there any correlation? Are departments seeing any increase in mistakes or incidents that might be hazardous to firefighters because they work too long?
That's a great question. That was one of our first questions as a survey out to other fire chiefs and fire administrations. Exactly, it's a fear of fire leadership. That's why people are hesitant for that. That was a fear. As we approached, these departments have been on it. Chief from Richardson, Chief Boobie, Chief from Grapevine, different ones, they're watching those things. The last year's, and it's been zero. It's been none of that. And one of the big things is you have to have a good culture. What I mean by that is previous culture to our leadership, it was very micromanaging. So you couldn't sleep during the day. You could get a nap during the day or after training. It was just constantly, you're up, which, you know, you're gonna wear somebody out. So we don't do that anymore. We've changed that culture to where we have our captains run the station, they know their crews. Same thing with staffing. We don't micromanage from our level, that's the battalion chief's. I mean, that's his job, is we have one to run a shift. So they know if that ambulance is ran hard all night long, right here, this ambulance stays very busy, so it's almost all three of them. Then they can switch their staffing around the next day. They're not locked in that for 48 hours. They can still be, they can ride the engine, they can get rest. There's different things that we put in place, mechanisms. And so that's a very good question, but there has been no increase from all the departments we've talked to. I just had a workshop in December down in San Antonio with 140 plus fire chiefs. And this was a conversation we had, and they have not seen any increase in mistakes, injuries, any accidents.
Okay, well, I think it'd be, obviously, I'm not telling you how to do your job, but I'll call it the fatigue factor of just being there, being on the go for 48 hours straight. And so I hope that we'll keep an eye on that and
definitely.
maybe judge the long-term success based on what we see.
100%, and that's that. The one thing, there's been studies done. We've had a lot of medical studies on this already. It's one of those reports we pulled is from a doctor out in California. I think there's one in Colorado, but there's a long report on it, and it's all about this that you're talking about. And so we read that report. It's about sleeping. That's what Shannon was alluding to as far as actually the sleep schedule is better. Because here's the thing: is when we were in operations, you're either working, you're going, or coming back to work. You're never getting a day off, unless you're taking a vacation day that we have. And so that's the thing with here, is these individuals come back, or guys and girls come back and rested. So they're able to do it 4 days, because they're gonna have these 4 days off, because that's, the studies have shown really good for that. And also one of the things we're about to get to, we'll get to the next presentation if you are good, but when Luke comes up here after Chief DeDeer, our EM, he's gonna talk about mental health, which we talked about last year. And FIRST, which one of our partners that we helped out with in our EAP program, but also with HR's helped us get to, they're a huge supporter of this because they've shown how it's helped our mental health across the fire service. So it's a very big thing we'll hear about from Luke too, so.
And I credit Chief Latimer on this, but he even went as far as speaking to other cities' employees, spouses, what they thought about it, how it's improved their family life, their marriage. I mean, everything about it. They say that the person is more rested, and overall, just having them as a family unit together more is just beneficial for everyone. So credit him on that, because a lot of fire chiefs would not have done that, but he goes in the deep end and checks everything out, so.
Yeah, so I found some different forums. We might use Leanne, my wife, she's really good at this too, a good partner, but yeah, we went undercover, they know the chief, and just kind of let them, oh, we're the fire department, and they thought, oh, the firefighter, cool. So talk to me more honestly, and so we went and spoke with all different ranges, different families, so we get a good collective feedback from all different levels. So, and everything was positive.
Very good.
All right, at this time, I'm gonna call our Assistant Chief of Prevention, Tim DeDeer, up here. He's gonna be speaking about our brigade program. Thank y'all for y'all's opinion on that one. Don't worry, we only have 2 more to go, and I'm not speaking anymore, so it's gonna go really fast.
Chief, got 5 minutes, just trying to keep us on time frame.
Well, good morning, Mayor and Council. Good morning. The Branch Brigade Edutainment Program, that really is a word. Entertainment with an educational aspect. And that's what our Branch Brigade is best at. So who has had the opportunity to have seen our Branch Brigade in action, edutainment? Several of y'all. If you haven't, I encourage you over the course of the year to get out there and watch them. We're going to have them at our special events, not only in our schools, but give you an opportunity to see their talent at work. About a year and a half ago, we took on a challenge of creating a video that was lighthearted, short, informative, and definitely entertaining on how to maintain fire safety and fire code compliance in our schools. So we joined with the Carrollton Farmers Branch Independent School District and also Carrollton Fire Rescue and came up with this video of the dynamic duo, the Batman and Robin. And with the help of the fire marshals, of course, saving the day by eliminating the dangers of hazards in our classrooms. Have y'all seen that video?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, this is a hot news. No one knows about it. Fire chief just heard about it. So this is where I'm going with. This branch brigade is a special group of talented individuals. In June of this year, at the Texas School Conference in San Antonio, the Farmers Branch Fire Department, the Carrollton Fire Rescue, and the Carrollton Farmers Branch Independent School District will be awarded the Fall 2023 School Safety Spotlight Collaborative Community Partnership Award on behalf of the Dynamic Duo video. So we're excited about going down there and being with the school district for receiving this award. So what is edutainment? It's designed to engage with and invest in the community. It's educating the community on fire and life safety topics, foster awareness and understanding, and delivering educational programs designed to captivate and entertain, ensuring the message is memorable, and mitigate fire and life safety risk in the community. The fire department began utilizing the clowns and puppeteering in the 1980s. We had one individual. And by the 1990s, that interest grew. He was doing such a good job, and everybody wanted to be part of that program. So we had more people join the program and form the actual branch brigade. Driven by a passion for educating the children about the dangers of fire, they focused on delivering impactful public educational programs, employing techniques such as clowning, characterization, and puppeteering. The 2000 era brought an expansion to the program due to the popularity in our schools. The program was expanded to all the grades in our elementary schools, and more fire personnel became interested in teaching these children, and they joined the brigade. In 2002, we purchased a cargo trailer to carry our props and sound equipment. By 2020, we started focusing on enhancing our outreach program. The program has sustained its popularity in schools as an effective means of conveying crucial life safety messages, but we aim to utilize this model along with consistent messaging, new clowns and characters, and the new community outreach trailer to reach a broader audience. The Farmers Branch Fire Department just recently purchased and we're awaiting delivery of a towable trailer with a 24-foot stage for the branch brigade. This is going to help us promote and demonstrate community outreach at our schools and our special events by contributing to the improved overall engagement and safety awareness. The trailer is replacing that 21-year-old 8-foot trailer, which is going to be storing sound equipment, stage backdrops, props, any other necessary equipment. The current trailer is not sufficient in size as the program has expanded over these years. The new trailer expands for that equipment. It has a rear ramp door to allow us for efficient loading and unloading. It also has a tilt-down wall that converts to a stage for the performances. A functioning kitchen and will be also incorporated into the trailer, which can be used not only as a prop for fire and life safety presentations, but also to provide an opportunity for us, if we're at a special event, if we need to warm up something or if we need to pull up a drink out of the icebox. An office area also will be included in the front part of the trailer. It has heating and air conditioning. This is going to help us utilize our emergency management and command functions, and also for the privacy and comfort for those that might need first aid at the special events. The branch brigade vision moving forward is to consistently enhance our fire and life safety education within the community. Also recruit fire personnel for the program that are passionate about fire and life safety. We want to mentor, we want to train the new clowns, the characters, and provide continued support for existing members.
Sorry, that's my iHeartRadio.
Also, we want to ensure proper upkeep of equipment and props and sustain the seamless delivery of programs and enhance outreach by seeking opportunities to engage within the community. So, any questions? We're excited about getting this trailer and getting out there in the community and showing our talents.
Absolutely. Councilman Roman, you want to start first?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good.
Good?
I'm good.
I'll just have one quick question. It goes into the 4896 that we just talked about. These individuals on the branch brigade, and when we schedule these opportunities to go out with this particular initiative, that outside of operations, is that correct?
Yes.
Just a clarification on how that, configuration is allotted, that's
Yeah,
all.
and there's some times where you have some people that are actually on shift during that time, where the engine company will be there in support because it's a short duration show, or they can reduce that engine down from a 4 to a 3 static.
Very good,
But we always make it work if it's in the effect.
very good. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you, that's sir.
Tim?
Yes,
I have a question. When they go out, are these folks that are on shift, part of their shift, or are they coming in?
Depends on when their performance is. It might be on shift or they might be off shift, or we'll bring them in for overtime.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, you might.
So Daniel, before we get too far, I just want to make a point of clarification with Tim. There's a question about overtime and how that type of outreach works. And my response is the departments have an overtime budget and they manage within that overtime budget for these events. We usually try and schedule them when it makes sense, but the departments will manage within the overtime budget that they have, including these outreach events.
Correct, correct. So one of the things that you also need to tell me are actually part of special events, and that's part of this cost. But we had that budget, we worked underneath operations budget. And so we're, like Tim said, we're very delicate with that throughout the year, obviously, to be sure we come in underneath budget. And so we're looking at, can we pull from engine, is there somebody on duty, or is this something we need to bring somebody else in? And a lot of times what we've done over the last 3 years, is administration fills in because we're exempt. And we can take that off there as also. At this time, I would like to introduce, y'all know him, but Luke Partner, our emergency management coordinator, and then back to the stage, Assistant Chief Shane Langford.
Excuse me. Mayor, Council, thank you very much. So we're going to talk about our public safety and mental health program. I know it's, 2 people from the fire department are up here talking about this. So this isn't just fire, this is public safety, so it's PD and fire. So keep that in mind. We're not just talking about our firefighters, but also our police officers. So kind of an overview of our program that we have currently. This is public safety, specific peer support, training and counseling services that we provide for all of our officers, firefighter, paramedics, and also includes everyone that's in the administration side, prevention side, over in PD, covers everybody. So it does provide for 170 plus personnel. And the main goal of this program is to kind of stop the stigma. That's one of the main goals with seeking mental health, with providing for this. And the reason that we have a public safety specific program is because public safety is different. The firefighter, paramedics, police officers, they are seeing things that the general public usually doesn't see. they're experiencing things, they're dealing with certain situations that require a more unique approach. So why is this all necessary? First, just the nature of the job. First responders are subjected to traumatic events, and sometimes they just have to move on to the next call as soon as that traumatic event is over, and they kind of have to just put it behind them. A lot of people don't realize kind of what our firefighters, paramedics, and police officers experience on a day-to-day, what they see, what they smell, what they are touching, and so it's kind of just the nature of the job. There is an increased risk for our first responders, longer hours, lack of sleep, increased call volume, lack of resources. When I say lack of resources, I'm saying lack of mental health resources historically for first responders. There's been several local events. I'm sure that y'all have probably heard of some of these. In Dallas, they've had several events that have happened with their firefighters and police officers. McKinney, Hearst, even right here in Farmers Branch, we've had our own. And we're trying to combat that negative stigma attached to this. So that historical viewpoint of first responders don't need help. You have to be tough, you have to be a man. It could affect your job if you seek help. And the lack of trust in going and seeking help. So what is the old way of doing kind of mental health for first responders? Well, I can tell you, just brush it off. That was the old way of thinking. You leave a call where you see death, or whatever you see, it's a stressful situation, brush it off and move on. That's the old way of thinking about it. Be a man, or be a woman, and just deal with it. You don't need to burden others with your problems. You don't need to go talk to your peers. You don't need to go talk to other people about this. Again, brush it off, be a man, suck it up, move on. And unfortunately, have a drink and forget about it. Or substance of choice, go and do that and just forget about it. And so a lot of people don't realize that police officers are significantly higher risk for suicide than civilians. And unfortunately, police officers are more likely to die by suicide than they are in line of duty. So that's why we need this, is because that shouldn't be the case. Suicide rate with first responders was more than 10 times the rate found in the general population. First responders as a whole. And alcohol abuse among firefighters is roughly 2 to 3 times that of the general population. So that's what we're trying to combat here, right? We don't want them to resort to that or any other means of support. So where are we right now? Well, we've created peer support teams. So what do they do? For public safety, again, we have fire and police. So fire has their peer support team, police has theirs. Fire, we have 9 members. We have 3 on each shift, so that we have really good coverage. And they're providing resources. So if somebody comes to them, they need help, they have resources right there that they can provide to them. They can give them a phone number, they can give them a website, they can call people for that peer and give them the help that they need. They can also just lend an ear. A lot of times that's what you need. You just need to talk to somebody and have them actually hear you and listen to you. And we have, in the fire department, we have members of the peer support team among all ranks, all the way from firefighter, driver, captain, all the way up to the battalion chief. We have somebody in each rank to, again, break down the barriers to these first responders seeking help. Firefighter might not want to go talk to a battalion chief if that's their peer supporter. They're going to want to talk to another firefighter. And then Shannon had something else to add here also.
Many of you heard me speak last year about it, but some of you didn't, that weren't here last year, where my passion is driven from on this subject. The previous city that I worked for, we didn't have a program at all. And we ran a very bad call. It was a child that was murdered. And ultimately, the partner that I was working with fell victim to not having the resources and ultimately lost his career due to substance abuse and other issues as well. So that's where my passion comes from for it. I see firsthand what it can do to somebody and what it can do for not having the resources to offer them. So later on in my career, thereafter that happened, we started a peer support program here. So when I got here, one of my first things was that I noticed we didn't have anything here, so I wanted to implement something as quickly as possible. So we started at the peer support team locally, and we've been training people to get through that. And then we started with getting critical incident stress debriefing coming in, and then we started working with FIRST this year. And I can't state how great they've been. They've been phenomenal, so.
And part of with the peer support team is creating that culture of support. So it starts, we have support for this all the way from the very top. And so that's really what we're trying to create here. And if you've ever, those of y'all that went to the award ceremony, y'all know that the fire department and the police department, we're a family. And that's what we do, is we look out for each other. So peer support team is just an extension of that. So mental wellness training, both departments, fire and police, we've both done mental wellness training within this past year. And it is really covering resiliency, talking about the science of trauma, so what is actually happening when you experience a traumatic event or you have chronic stress. And it's covering mental and physical well-being. Physical well-being is directly linked to mental, and mental to physical. And so we want to make sure we address both of those, not ignore them. And it's giving our first responders evidence-based skills to be able to head this off before they need more help. And so we're trying to get ahead of it. And so that's what we're doing with mental wellness training. We are partnered with several different organizations. We are working with a company called FIRST to be able to provide this mental wellness training. We've got several classes that we are planning for our first responders. And we've also got a Dallas County grant that we're using to help fund these classes. And so that grant was really beneficial to help us get these classes in here to help our first responders. Finally, counseling services. So we do offer counseling services for all first responders. It is 100% confidential. I don't want to know who's going to it. And that is another barrier that people see, is that if I go to a counselor, the city's going to find out about it, and it could affect my job. It won't, but that's the fear. And so we want to eliminate that. We do have multiple options. So there is the city's EAP with public safety specific services that they can seek with that. We also have other partners that they're able to go to and get those counseling services provided. It's provided at no cost, whether they're going through the EAP or through another provider that we have. And it does cover spouses and children. So if they're on the city insurance, they're covered under the EAP. And then also through some of the other organizations, they can still, there's nonprofits at those organizations like FIRST, they can work with other nonprofits that can help provide that. If not no cost, then a severely reduced cost. So any questions about the mental wellness program?
Thank you, Lou. Councilwoman?
I do. So when you said the counseling services and at 100%, I guess I have two questions actually. How receptive are you guys and your staff, your employees, to actually utilizing them? Are they overcoming the obstacles of the barrier to do so?
Yeah, they are.
Okay.
Obviously, that's confidential, so we don't
Correct.
get exact numbers, but we do get them come back to give us feedback themselves without us trying to dig into that. They come to us themselves telling us thank you for having these options for them that we used to not have.
Okay.
So.
And then to the 100%, or which for me goes to the, as a provider, the ease of access. If the children or the parent or the spouses don't have 100% coverage and it takes them an opportunity of a grant to get to that, utilization of the service, does that delay care?
That is always a possibility. Hopefully it doesn't. I know with First, for spouses and children, the nonprofits that First will approach the nonprofits on behalf of the patient. And it's not gonna take, weeks or months to get that funding secured. It could be same day, and they told me roughly like $25 would be the severely reduced amount, if not free. And that would be for spouses and children of the first responders.
And you said sometimes within days, within a day? Okay.
And First is on our EAP as well, so we can utilize that pretty quickly and get them help expediently. We actually had a bad call a couple of years ago, a Mayday call that some of our individuals needed some help with, and we called one of our resources, and the next day they had those people coming in for help individually, and then the next day after that, they came in with a full critical incident stress debriefing for everybody involved, for all the quad cities that were involved.
Perfect, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilman Mayor.
No questions. I think it's bodes well, and Chief Langford, you gave a heartfelt rationale on why it's important. It's important to you, it's important to all of us that these individuals have these type of resources, and it makes sense to have that culture. And I appreciate you working with those vendors, working with HR to make those options available. It's a tough job, and we take it for granted for the most part, but we realize the level of engagement is way beyond our expectations. So thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate the support of council and city management on this topic as well as HR.
Councilman Bowman.
So I think sort of my question, to piggyback off of what Councilwoman Burton said, what her question was, how are we measuring success? I understand that, you're having communication with people that said that it's working and it's going well. But I've heard about other companies implementing mental health resources that are there, and they say, oh, well, we have these available. But the real question is, how do we know it's working? How do we know it's succeeding? How do we know it's being utilized? And so I think last year we had talked about this. I had specifically mentioned that I was trying to, it'd be nice to have some sort of, something that's measurable to demonstrate that it's being successful. And I think that's also a way to be boastful about the program and say, hey, based off of the metrics that we have in place, we have a 90% success rate in utilization or in being able to address concerns from people by utilizing the mental health resources. So it's just maybe something to think about.
Absolutely. Councilman Mayor.
No questions, just I support this very much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So I'm going to dovetail on what Councilwoman Burton said. Because I had originally written down my question, so, have we had people utilize the service? Okay.
Absolutely, yes.
And I'm not looking for a number, but I just want to know people that they're taking advantage of this. And then have you all, as management, received any feedback, positive, negative, about the service being offered?
It's been all positive.
Okay.
We received, everybody's thankful because, like he stated, there used to not be resources across any department, not just ours. There wasn't any. So it's to the forefront in our country right now, not just in public safety. Mental health is a real problem, and it's being addressed in multiple avenues. So I think that we're on the right track, for sure.
No, I think so too.
One of the things I'll add to that before if everybody's good, everybody go through questions?
Yeah.
And I'll close this up and then we'll
I do
pass
have
on.
one more.
Okay, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm just piggybacking off of
Yeah, go
that,
ahead.
and it just came to mind. Just to make certain, since this is a new program for you guys, there are no gaps in care that you need.
Yeah, at this time, we are good with our budget, that's the funding of that and what we have on that. And that's something that we will continue to look at because this last grant we had came from Dallas County. We worked with some other fire chiefs to establish this. We're using these funds, funnel through. So that's something that we're going to look into this next budget year. Dallas County going to give us this grant money again the next year. And so something that we're already looking at and discussing. So that's a very good question because that's something we're going to have. We started this program, created it. Now we got to run it. Right? We don't want just 1 year up and then down. So that is something that we're looking at already in the budget cycle. So to answer your question. And then one of the things, the measurements, a very good question, Councilman Omar as well, and Mayor Lynn. I believe police has some stuff too. They can feedback on this. Jay can talk on this real quick before we close up. One of the things I do is I grew up here, and this I'm going to talk about measurement, how I, as our fire chief, have measured this. So I said this last year, I think the Councilman can see me. So I talked about this last year. I too I was an instructor at Brookhaven College for several years. Like Chief Langford, I have had several different firefighters that I had taught either commit suicide or attempt to be unsuccessful. So people that I know, people that I've taught, go through that. So very passionate about this as well. And one of the things that I measure, I learned from teaching at Dallas Fire Rescue through Brookhaven is the people. That's what we're trying to take care of. And how do you measure that, right? We can't get into confidentiality and all these things. And so for me, as our fire chief, growing up in Farmers Branch, it's having relationships with these people still and their families. And so that's one of the things I continue to do. And so my measurement is, what is the divorce rate? Is my divorce rate in my department, is that increasing, decreasing, or stabilizing? Well, it's decreasing. We're not having as much divorce. What is our sick time usage looking like? We watch that. We're getting reports currently right now. So that's a measurement that I'm doing as well, because that's going to show me when our culture was really bad, just not too long ago, 4 years ago, guess what sick time was through the roof, right? What about why is sick time there? They don't want to be at work, and now they're alone, and they're drinking more. So then my thing too is I have a lot of friendships still I establish, I check on. I have my wife, she uses her relationships, we check on people and see where they're at, and that's another thing we do. So we're measuring that. It's hard to say, okay, put a quantitative number to that, because I can see that. I can see that on their faces. It's conversations they have. It's the guys coming in my office late at night while I'm still there working. Chief, you got a second? Yeah, sure did. Walk in, what's up? I just want you to know that I went and talked to X, Y, and Z, and this is what I'm talking about, and it's really helped me out. And now I want to be a peer support member so I can go out there and help others that help me. And so that's right now how we've been measuring. And it's been a success. Jay, would you like to add to that measurement for us from the police side? Can we close up?
Let me just remind everybody real quick, please speak a little louder when you're not in front of the podium microphone, and would you move your microphone over a little bit, because you're looking at them and the microphone's over here, just so everybody can hear you. Thank you.
Just from the Jay Siegel, Assistant Chief of the Police Department, from the police perspective, so I actually went through the peer support program with two of our officers. So I actually got the training and all that, and we put it out to our officers. And as far as the effectiveness of people using the program, I can say anecdotally, just it is effective. Of course, a big part, and that's what Shannon and Luke are hammering home, is anonymity is really important for the first responders to buy into this. So I've had people directly come to me, which is a great feeling, because we put out the information and say, hey, we're the peer support group people, please come to us, directly and indirectly. And that's part of it too, where you see a colleague suffering and you come and bring it up and say, hey, I think so-and-so needs to be just asked how they're doing, right? So in that respect, we have referred people to counseling. And what I've asked of the people that come to me directly and indirectly that I've had conversations with is, if you don't mind, I don't want to know your business. Can you tell me if it was effective, if it worked for you? Because we don't want to keep sending people stuff that is not working. And 100% the people that I'm talking about said yes. And they thanked the city for the support, and again, the city council and the PD. And so what we try to do at the PD, and I don't know if fire might do something similar too, is anytime we have a critical incident, is we always debrief the incident from a tactical perspective. What did we do well? What could we do better? We also add the mental wellness aspect now. This is what you may be feeling. This is what you can expect. And then we just reiterate the resources that are available to them.
And that's also been effective. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, well, at this time, we will be done, and we'll pass this over to our brothers in blue.
Chief, come on up.
And my favorite police chief in the country.
Hey, while the chief's coming up, just a couple of things on mental health issues. A recent survey said that in our nation, citizens are more comfortable now than they've ever been. They have more wealth than they've ever had, they're more comfortable, and mental health issues are higher than they've ever been. They're trying to figure out the correlation between that, but then you look at that in the community, and it's at least double that within public safety. So it's great to see you all working so hard on that.
I didn't realize that. Sorry.
Mayor and Council, Kevin Floyd, Chief of Police. I know I'm not part of that presentation, but just to jump on real quick, the great work that our fire department is doing in conjunction with a lot of the work that Jay has done inside the organization. Coming from another organization not too far from here that's a little bit larger, I can tell you where we are as a city is way ahead of other agencies. The work that Jay is doing to debrief incidents, which is very new in the law enforcement culture outside of special teams like SWAT, but they get patrol groups back together and debrief and have the opportunity to go through and talk about stuff, and then creating a culture that's accepting of asking for help without attaching stigma to it. There's been a big change in law enforcement. For those of us that have been in it for over 30 years, you may or may not know somebody who loses their life in the line of duty, but you definitely know people who took their life because of the job that they did. I know several of them. We've had them in Farmers Branch and surrounding agencies, and so it is a big problem. Our suicide rate is significantly higher than our line of duty death rate. And it shouldn't be that way, and we're doing some good work to change it. Luke and Chief Langford are doing some really great work, and Jay did a lot of great work long before I got here. So my part of the presentation is to talk a little bit about what we've done in the police department. I came here after this meeting occurred last year, and Jay took the lead on that in setting up some of the initiatives from the previous budget year that we worked to implement over the past year, and then of course we added about a dozen things to it in the time period since then. So I'm going to try to go over as many of those as I can fairly quickly, but to follow up on where we are, and mine apparently didn't come through as a PowerPoint. Can't do it through yet. That's okay. Where I want to hit on, because these were council priorities that were given to me and directives that we've been carrying forward and will carry forward into the next fiscal year, is our staffing, making sure our staffing numbers are where they need to be, and we'll talk about that in just a second. Traffic enforcement, which we've heard so much about at all of our meetings. I've heard at every meeting that I've been through pretty much from citizens, and also listened to council talk. Social media, where we've gone on that front and where we're headed. The mandatory crime reduction plan program, which we also continue to hear a lot about, and I have a proposal that I would like to lay out in front of you that we'll get to towards the end of the presentation. And then in general about where we are as a city from our crime standpoint. Staffing, the big issue. It was a challenge. It's a challenge for the industry. It was a challenge for us when I arrived here. Some good work was already being done. I can't take credit for any of it. We have great people in the police department. They do really, really good work. Ben Sergeant Best was doing a bang-up job of leading that initiative to get people in the door, and we've been very successful getting to where we are at this point in our staffing strategy. So we're full, which is, a great thing for any police chief to be able to say, and it's fairly unique in North Texas to be able to come and say, we don't have any positions that we can hire at the moment. And that's, again, attributable to the reputation of our city and our organization, and to the great work that the people doing the job, now Sergeant Vasquez, under Lieutenant Best, and Dee, our civilian background investigator, are doing, getting people in the door. But all of our officers are recruiting, and they're reaching out to people. We're pulling people from other organizations. But the interesting thing is, you're kind of on the right track when people who have left your organization are trying to come back. And we've had a couple of those, and potentially a third one in the wings that may be looking to come back to our organization because they like what they're seeing from the outside and where we're headed. So we're good from a staffing standpoint. Of course, a lot of those are in training, and the hiring process, but our numbers have come up significantly in the field. You're seeing a lot more patrol officers. Last night, I think they had 9 patrol officers out in the field, which is really good for us to have that many people out in the field patrolling. K-9 unit has been restarted. We've selected an officer. Officer Hendricks is going to be our new K-9 handler. He's off selecting his dog now. And once he picks his dog, then they'll begin the training process, and then he'll go back down in a month and train with the dog. So hopefully by May, June time, you should see a dog back on the streets of Farmers Branch, which is really, really huge for our patrol officer. That's a great tool to have available in the field. It's a force multiplier. It just gives you so many things that you can do when it comes to tracking and searching. So we're really excited about that. Investigative unit staffing is back up. We've added positions back in, hired new detectives and put them in place. So we've got 1 or 2 more spots to fill as people get out of training, but we've done some really good work on that front. Traffic unit, we're going to talk about the traffic unit specifically here in another slide. We're doing some really good work on the traffic front, and of course, during the last year and kind of leading down to this year, we've taken over the Marshals program, which we call the court unit, and we're building them space as part of the remodel of the building inside the organization, and that's going very well. Some of the initiatives that we've started, the council funded last year with the Axon redeployment and upgrading to license plate reading cameras in all of our squad cars will help significantly with clearing our backlog of municipal court warrants as we get that system going. We just went live with that system installed in the cars a week ago. Now we're turning on the reporting with the state. So we should be making pretty good progress in that area pretty quickly. The detention has been full staff. We had one person that left us recently, some medical issues, and decided to go ahead and leave and go to a different job because of the health issues. And so we're hiring. We already have somebody in the process right now to fill that spot, so that spot will be filled really, really quickly. And then we created the media specialist position, which I'll talk about in just a minute, and the PSEO position, the enforcement, parking enforcement, that we added in the budget, and we're now starting to deploy out to the field. So traffic, right? The big thing that I hear all the time from our citizens is, what are we doing to slow people down in the city? What are we doing to make the city safer? And we've done some really, really good work in the past year with council support and following the direction that y'all have given us. Obviously, the big one is the expansion of the traffic unit with the addition of motorcycles, which will hit the streets in the summertime. They've been purchased and ordered. We're waiting for delivery and upfit. 4 officers have been selected to attend the training. That training will be held down at Bryan in conjunction with TEACS, the Texas A&M Agricultural Extension Service, and Harley Davidson. Great class. It's a class that I went through 20 years ago. Very well done. Not an easy class at all, but when they come out of that class, they'll be top-notch riders. So we'll train that group up and then get them back here so we can get them deployed in the field. From a car standpoint, most of you already are aware that Officer Babineau has returned to his traffic enforcement duties. So he's back out in the field now daily working traffic and going to our problem areas when we get complaints and we can target Babineau. He's driving one of the new cars that looks like that, the more black Tahoes rather than the black and white ones. We switched to that design kind of towards the end of the year, going to a little fresher, updated look. The officers really, really like it. They like the way people have responded to it out in the field. So Babineau's out there now. When you see that car, it's probably him. There's 3 of them now because we picked up 2 yesterday, but the one, he's in one of them, so watch out for that car when you see it. The all black one is me, and watch out for him too. The PSEO positions, which Jay talked about last year, we talked about our strategic initiatives. We've gone forward with that program. It's been a little bit of a building process, creating policies and procedures and setting everything up, and we've had to come back to the council a couple times to change how we're going to handle parking enforcement and the citations and the systems that those go through. We're in a good spot now. We have an employee out doing the job currently. Jay's in the process of filling the 2nd position, but we're up and running with that program. It's out there. We're waiting on the vehicle still. That's a supply chain issue. It's been ordered, and we're just waiting for it to be delivered to give them the specific tools to do the job, but we have the other truck that we're using in the meantime. Flock and LPR, we've expanded that. It came through as a budget item. We have a more expansion plan in the future. We want to make it so if you come into our city from our surrounding communities, particularly from the south into the north that we're capturing data on stolen cars, on people who are wanted and catching them as they come into town, to prevent crime before it happens. So we're working on the deployment of that system right now. We'll be looking to expand that. And then there's the terminology Flock OS is kind of a real-time crime concept that we'll be looking towards in the future. We're trying to get a little more predictive, a little more analytical with where crime is occurring and where we need to deploy to stop it. And so that's kind of where the industry is headed, and we'll be headed that way in the near future as we look to get a little more into forecasting crime so we can prevent it before it occurs. And then the radar signs, which you're all familiar with, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that in just a second. So the traffic unit motor deployment, how are we dealing with our traffic concerns in the city and the ongoing concerns we have for speeding in town? First thing we did last year, and Jay headed up this project, was we purchased brand new radar systems. We upgraded all of our radars to current technology and replaced all of the systems in all of our squad cars. So all of the cars now are running new radar, more up-to-date, state-of-the-art equipment, so that we can do a better job of measuring and then having more confidence in the technology when we have to testify for where things are going. And then the staffing we talked about, we've selected the motor officers, have those back out. We'll eventually fill the second car traffic unit as soon as we get a few more people out of training. So we'll have a fully staffed traffic unit. And then hopefully by June, you'll see the motorcycles out there. There's already a lot of excitement inside of the department and outside in the community for the motor unit coming online. There will be a great asset in addition to the city through council support that we were able to get that started. And I say started because I don't think 3 motorcycles is the end point. I hope it's not the end point. I think we have plenty of opportunity. This city is ideally suited for motorcycle traffic enforcement. Lots of long straightaways, straight roads, good side streets, fairly low speed limits on most of our roadways through the city, and that's perfectly set up for traffic enforcement on the motorcycle. So you'll see that plan as we begin to kick off and go forward in the future with that motorcycle plan. They'll be out hopefully by June, and we'll have deployed at least 3 Monday through Friday is the plan, 2 motors in a car. Initially probably assigned to patrol rotations until we kind of break that system out. We have to work on the supervision and create a supervisor that can manage that unit, but initially they're going to be deployed as part of the patrol shifts. Speed signs. A proposal that we came up with kind of in the middle of the year of things we could do to help with getting people to slow down a little bit, and also with the equipment that we purchased, it allows us to capture data so we can see whether or not we truly have a problem. As you all know, because you get the complaints. We get a lot of people who say cars are speeding, and then we go out there and conduct the surveys and realize, okay, it's not really a lot of cars speeding, it's one or 2 people, and we can focus on those people and nip the problem in the bud. Or sometimes we realize, yeah, we do have a problem, and we need to send enforcement out there. So the system that we're going to hopefully go forward with, we want to add 3 additional signs, so we have 1 per council district effectively, so that when we get complaints that come through Seek Click Fix, or that come through your office, or come through the mayor or city manager's office, we can deploy a sign out there using our PSEOs in conjunction with our public works. Ryan has been an awesome help when it comes to getting these cameras put up. They're not exactly easy to mount to poles, and Ryan's team has done a really, really good job of helping us. They're great to work with. We put them up, leave them up for 30 days or so. The PSEOs will go pull the data off of them. They'll come back, we'll plug it in the computer, and it'll tell us if we have a problem, when we have a problem, how much of a problem it is, and it allows us then to focus our enforcement during the time we're most likely to have an impact on the problem. So we're trying to, again, be smarter with the way we're deploying our resources. I mean, if I tell somebody to go sit and work speeding on one of these streets at 2 o'clock in the morning, probably not going to be very effective when I know the problem's at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So that's where we use the speed limit sign to help us focus our efforts and be sure we're getting the right locations at the right time. And then social media. This was an idea that was brought forward to council last year that has now been finally taken root. In January, we got the person hired, Ashton, who I think most of you have met at this point. Moving the PIO function out from underneath the crime prevention position. And so we have our replacement crime prevention officer, Steve, retired. And so now we have our newest crime prevention officer, Officer Britton, who's taken over that role and will be doing a lot of the other stuff Steve was doing since the police academy, community engagement, meeting with department managers, and then Ashton focusing on increasing our presence in social media and engaging with the community. And we pulled just some stats from her first 28 days. These numbers have gone up since then. But followers are going up, which is what I was trying to do, is increase our reach with the citizens. Frequency of our posting is going up. If you're tracking our social media stuff now, you know you're going to see 2 or 3 posts a day with stuff that's going on. We're also using it as a platform to share what's happening in other parts of the city. We posted stuff about Barney Wood being closed or just, forecast, trying to share the message of the city utilizing our platform as well, because we want to be good partners with everybody, not just building the reputation of the police department. So we're trying to share that information. Our reach has gone up. I checked it this morning. It's actually up to about 160,000 that we're getting with our messaging that's getting out. The people that are watching our stuff that's happening, our interaction is up. Hoya was the top opening. I think it's our top post. I think it's still the number one. It was just under 116,000 people that interacted with that post when we ran this at the end of January. We're starting to see that kind of traction. The newest social media star, as you've seen in the police department, is Tuck. Tucker, our emotional support dog, who happens to be the owner, is Ashton. But Tuck is a trained and certified emotional support animal, and so we've used him inside of the police department with our officers. And that's been received really well on by the officers, and then also we've used him in our social media front to engage with the citizens. And of course, everybody loves dogs, and cute corgis don't hurt. So he's doing a really good job in that role, and she's doing a really good job building our presence in social media. So I'm really happy with where that program is going. Our outreach is really increasing significantly. We're starting to do a lot more posting when highways are closed down, when there's a crash. We've been picked up several times by DFW Scanner, which is kind of where you want to be when you're posting avoid area stuff. There's a crash here, there's a road closed. Usually if the DFW Scanner picks up your feed and retweets it, you're going to hit thousands of people. And so when we have the ability to tell people, hey, stay off of 35, we've got a crash, a road closure, and pick alternate routes, and we see it's been picked up and retweeted by them in the news, and we're hitting our target, is trying to keep people from getting jammed up in traffic and then getting angry and then thinking bad things about the city, or worse, posting bad things about the city and the traffic flow. So we want to try to get a heads up as much as we can. We've had a lot of good impact in that role. So we talk citizen engagement. It's a big thing. I talked a lot about citizen engagement. We engaged with our citizen on patrol team last night and discussed a little bit about our community engagement and what we're trying to do. And when we brought forward a change in the ordinance last year for solicitation, some of the issues we were having in intersections with people standing in the roadways and begging for money or asking for money, walking into traffic and creating safety concerns, we posted the changes and had the ordinance brought up, and Public Works was working on signs, and council made a recommendation at that time that we look at doing something like surrounding cities had done, Coppell and Carrollton specifically, and creating those solicitation signs. And so we've taken that recommendation to heart, and so developed and designed no soliciting signs, and Vanna will help me here. We brought, Vanna J. The signs are ready. They are developed. We brought one for each member of council. You're the first recipients of these signs. So we now have no solicitation signs, so it's not just a picture. That's what it looks like. We have 250 of them, minus 6, that are available for the public, and we're going to work as a citizen engagement program through Ashton, our communications manager on our side, to get information out to the public so that they'll be able to come to the police department and receive a sign. We'll have a form that they'll sign off. Because we want to try to limit it to one per household, at least on the initial rollout. And so we'll provide them with a copy of the ordinance, and they'll sign for receipt of the sign. And they'll be given the sign for free, no charge to the citizen. And then if they can't, we'll work with our Citizens on Patrol program to deliver signs for those that can't get to the police department, schedule-wise or mobility. If they can't make it to the police department, we'll send our Citizens on Patrol teams out and they'll deliver the signs to the houses for them. So trying to make it as easy as possible for our citizens and to get information out to them on the solicitation and then provide them with means of advertising. We wrote the ordinance so that as long as you have a sign that says no solicitation in front of your house, the ordinance is enforceable. And this obviously meets the requirements of that ordinance. So you'll see these popping up all around town. Of course, we took advantage of it, put our patch on it because, well, looks good. It made a great sign. All right, the big one, mandatory crime reduction program. Where are we going with the mandatory crime reduction program in the future proposed? We've had some meetings, the assistant chiefs and I, and with Steve when he was here, and now Officer Britton, with apartment managers to hear some of their concerns, and the Greater Dallas Apartment Managers Association, I think is their official title. They came in and met with us, and we had a really good meeting at the PD about some of the concerns with our ordinance and where they would like to see some improvement on. So we sat down and took a look at the ordinance to see where we could potentially make some improvements in the way the ordinance was put into place, and whether we counted people as whether or not they were in violation of the ordinance. So what we've looked at and we decided would be a good approach to dealing with the ordinance moving forward is to measure apartment complexes against the city rather than against houses. So I have previous experience with this program in another jurisdiction, and some of the issues that we've had, as you'll see on the next slide, is when you have massive crime reduction in the city, it really over-focuses on single family. And so their crime goes way down compared to maybe some of what's happening in the rest of the city. When you're measuring multifamily, where you have a lot of people against a street where you have not even a tenth of the people in the same square footage, then it's not really a great measurement of whether or not your apartment complex is having a problem. It just means you're different than the houses next to you. So what we're proposing and looking at in the ordinance is just a straight measure of crime in the multifamily, in the apartment, to crime in the city, measured by the number of housing dwelling units we have in the city. So very simple formulation. The biggest change to the ordinance is really in one section. It's the calculation of the city's crime index and how we get there. It's part 1 crimes that are measurable plus part 2 crimes that are measurable. Same crimes for city as it is for the apartment complex. The apartment complex divides by the number of apartment units. We divide by the number of dwelling units in the city, houses, single family, and multifamily. Our number creates the crime risk threshold for the city. Their number creates their crime index for the apartment complex. If they're above us, they're out of compliance, the ordinance kicks in. If they're beneath us, then they're doing good, and they don't have to make any changes. Obviously, we'll still continue with apartment managers meetings and where we've been going with the outreach. Britain's taken that over. Steve had done a great job building that relationship. Britain got plugged into that by Steve before he left. We'll continue the communication with crime prevention and environmental design considerations that the ordinance would apply to them, cameras, lighting, shrubs, and a lot of the things that are now required for apartment complexes anyway. And then give them a fair measurement. So we recalculated the numbers for this year under this system. We would still have a complex that's in violation and would need to have focus on it, but that complex is looking at almost 10% crime, which is what we would expect. That's an area that needs focused attention. And so the way the ordinance would be written under this standard is it's one complex right now that would be in it. There are some issues there that we need to focus on in that particular complex, but all of the other apartment complexes in the city would currently be compliant. And most of them are. Again, we've met with many of them, and we developed the terminology substantially compliant. They've complied with the majority of the provisions of the ordinance now, as it's written. All the things, really the only area that any of them would be deficient in, not even all of them, is having a security guard on property full time. Lighting has been done, key access has been done, shrubbery's been trimmed. They're doing all of the things we're asking them to do, and they're attempting to comply with the ordinance. And so we're trying to figure out a way to give them credit for the work that they're doing, because a lot of these complexes are working really hard to become compliant. They're spending tremendous amounts of money. So my goal in looking at the ordinance was try to make the ordinance as safe as it could be for them and for the city. It gives us an arm to still enforce. The ordinance doesn't go away, but it gives them a means to be compliant. They can actually comply with the ordinance and be successful, so that they're not constantly having to live under the fear of this if they're not having a crime problem. So that's the proposal. We'll bring forward an ordinance should council decide that they would like to pursue that avenue in the future as we go forward. But I think we can make a couple of tweaks to this program and make it continue to be a successful program for the city, but where apartment complexes can be successful. And it's a little, the way the numbers are calculated now with multipliers is you'll have some complexes with very small numbers of crime that will be in the program. And it's really hard when you're dealing with managers and saying, hey, we're here to help you. You had 7 crimes, you have to go into this program. And for them to understand that and for us not to come across as we're trying to be too heavy-handed. And so that's some of these proposals that you're seeing there. I know there's gonna be a lot of questions about that, but. And the last summary slide I had, just where are we as a city again? I can't take credit for any of this. Most of the great work that's happened in our city has been done by our cops. They're out there every day doing really, really good work and working really hard. And we as North Texas have had a really good year when it comes to crime. Crime is down across the region. Our crime is down 12%. 12% Part A crime reduction is massive. That is a huge number to drop, and it means that our city is doing a really, really good job. It's a safe community. Our calls for service have also gone down a little bit. I would call that fairly flat, but our self-initiated activity has gone through the roof. So officers are doing significantly more now. They're much more active. Most of you have seen them out there on the streets. You passed officers. I passed officers on the way here to this call. Our arrests are up almost 30%. Our traffic stops were up 90%. And started this year, we're already heading down that road again. We were at just over 2,000 traffic stops for the month of January. So officers are engaged and they're out there working. We just did the post for those that saw it from our night shift that caught the gardeners coming out of the construction site with the sheets of plywood, which is great. That means officers are out there looking to prevent crime. They're seeing people, they're taking action and stopping, and that's what we want. We want people to not want to come to the city of Farmers Branch to commit criminal offenses. Go someplace where it's easier to be a criminal. We want you to be fearful of committing crimes against our residents. You can go somewhere else. And the night shift officers and the day shift patrols are doing a great job of selling that message and putting that out there. People are seeing our officers and they'll drive around flashing lights. If they see our people out there working, they'll go a different direction. And that's what the officers are doing. And you're seeing it reflected in our crime numbers. It's been a good year from a crime statistics standpoint. And that is the end of my slides. There was a lot of stuff, and I tried to talk quick and get through it all. But it's been a busy year, and it will be a busy year going forward. A lot of these initiatives were just started, and they will continue into the next fiscal year.
Thank you, Chief. This is great information. I really appreciate what you're doing. Council questions, nothing there? Councilman Rowan? Councilman Merritt?
Yes, Mayor. Chief, thank you for the presentation. I had the opportunity before our session started to touch base with Jay. Related to the no solicitation signs, I think that's a great program that we can emphasize. I did hear you say that individuals would sign a form and you would present the ordinance, the accompanying ordinance. I think it's very important as we emphasize there are some stipulations that it doesn't apply to, and therefore, like we do on many things that we have, we acknowledge that we accept all terms and conditions, and therefore I think it's super important that we emphasize the point of the ordinance that it does not apply to federal, state, local governments or public utilities acting in their performance of the employees' duties for their employer, and it does not apply to solicitations for religious, political, or other constitutionally protected activities or purposes. Super important, because I know you don't want to get a call that, let's just be honest, it's election season and Dave Merritt's going to be knocking on doors going forward, and I don't want to have, someone calling for no solicitation. It's super important that we communicate that. I hear what you're saying, but I want to make sure that we emphasize that to our residents through that form, through that signature acceptance of the terms and conditions.
And that's a great point, and especially with the season that we're in.
Sure.
Not just locally, but nationally, it's the time, and
Sure.
flyers are going out, and people are going around. It's important that we share with the public that that's protected activity. If a church group comes to your house, that's protected activity. So those aren't enforceable. You may not like it, but it's not a violation of the ordinance.
Correct.
It's a First Amendment activity. So we'll be sure to highlight that on the form.
Thank you very much. I appreciate all the efforts in the area of traffic reduction and of speed, et cetera, and enforcement, if you will. I also know that you referenced in your presentation that you're working with Public Works. I know Public Works is in the process of doing some assessments of how many signage elements that we have, making sure you talked of reference of the specific signage that captures speed and shows that. I think when we look at opportunities to communicate a holistic program, it includes signage, it includes enforcement, it includes radars as you're talking about. So I think making sure that we have the appropriate number of signs is a collaboration between your office and the Public Works office. I think it's super important to have that. I'd also give your team kudos on the amount of media that you're, in the social media aspects that you're pointing out. And I think this might be more directed to city management. We've had this discussion about social media and making sure that we have the interlocking tone and, you know, look and feel, if you will. And I appreciate you referencing the chief that you're giving kudos to other agencies, or excuse me, other departments in the city as they're doing things as well. But I think we need to make sure that we have a uniform approach. And maybe it's coming from City Hall, maybe it's coming from the media specialists out of PD, but we need to understand that we have a unified message and it has a similar look and feel. But engagement is the objective and you're reaching those goals, and I appreciate that very much. I wanted to talk a little bit, as you inferred that there'd be questions on the mandatory crime reduction program. I think your model of splitting this out is very prudent, and I think it's probably going to take a cycle or two to look for opportunities to tweak it, but I think this is a good starting point from that. The one thing that I would kind of ask, if you have sort of we recognize that, I think you used the term of the amount 10% might be you're into the MCRP if you're in an apartment. That's a projection, and correct me if I'm wrong. But is there the opportunity to, and maybe you've already thought of this, that you would have kind of less than 10% you'd be green, but maybe if you were from 6 to 9, you'd be in a yellow, and you'd have some sort of opportunity to communicate that you're approaching that. And so therefore, be able to have that conversation before we turn into a red status. But that's an operational aspect that I'm sure that you've at least factored into, but I wanted to make sure that we still had that level of engagement. We've already talked that we've met with those apartment operators, and so I just think there's an opportunity there to refine the program, and as I said, it may take a cycle or more to kind of come to that.
So that does get communicated monthly. Officer Rutherford started that program, and it was very well received by the apartment complex managers, and Officer Britton is picking that up. So he runs the numbers monthly.
Okay.
And then reaches out to the apartment complex and says, hey, you're doing good. Hey, you're getting kind of close over here. Your numbers are going up.
Appreciate that engagement on a monthly
We don't want anybody to be surprised when it comes to the end of the year and for them to go, oh my gosh, what happened? We want to be sure we're communicating and trying to get them compliant before we get to
very good.
The enforcement part.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chief. Appreciate all that work, as well as the entire staff that you have underneath you. Thank you.
I do, but it's to you first. So I'm gonna come back to that. Our census sits at 33,830,000, but I know that's not the accurate count with the apartments that have come on since then. What is the accurate count? I think last year, Rutherford said it was like 52,000. Do you have,
There's not a uniform data set, so you're gonna have, the state has a data set, the COG has a data set, the census has a data set. For the census, we're 35,991, which we know is all grossly undercounted. If we look at our permits and look at some other metrics, I'm comfortable saying when we're in the mid to low 40s, 44, 45 seems to be accurate, but the census didn't do us any favors. If you start looking at our permit history and activity and how the groups that bill us based on our population look at our population,
exactly.
they're hitting us in the mid 40s, so 44, 45 is probably most realistic. We can dive a little bit deeper with our permits and kind of see a correlation, but it would still have to be an estimate, would have to apply a model to it. But mid 40 sounds good, knowing that as the next census approaches, we will be above 50, probably closer to a build out range of 53 to 55. And that
Okay.
should be.
So then that brings me to my question to you on staffing. Are you staffed on what we actually have, or are you staffed on what the census says we have?
So I don't really calculate city population, that's kind of an old metric
Okay.
for determining number of officers. We look more at our call volume and committed and uncommitted times, and are we trying to stay, we try to stay close to 50-50 is the ideal number, maybe a little more towards uncommitted time, which is the proactive patrol time, than committed patrol time they're on calls for service. When that number jumps above 50%, then it tells you we've got a staffing concern that we need to address. Right now, we're doing really well, especially as we're getting people out of training and getting people back on the streets. Our numbers are still holding, and we measure that pretty much monthly in the reports that Catherine, our crime analyst, produced. It talks about how much time officers are spending on calls. So I watch that to see if there's issues developing. It could go up as, you know, as we get more dense, and we'll assess at that time, and then I'll come back working through the city manager's office and present proposals. But I'm pretty comfortable with where we are at the moment. We have pretty good staffing levels, and we're doing, our issue was, and Perla, who's now taken over Fleet and Finance, has done a great job of getting us back into vehicles. We had a vehicle shortage issue, and then we got too many people and not enough cars. She's done a lot of work with Cheryl, our new PSO, and we're back to full staff on vehicles. So now we have cars for everybody. We're doing really well on that front. But we'll definitely come back with that one if it proves to be an issue, but I'll be sure to let the city manager know as if those numbers are beginning to push a certain direction, that we get ahead of it.
Okay. Just making certain. Thank you.
So she,
The fire chief would have said yes, give them a motion.
We're not in budget season just yet.
Oh, sorry. We'll wait.
Chief, thank you. I really appreciate the work you and our deputy chiefs have been doing. It's noticeable. There's a difference, and obviously the metrics that you provided here help to illustrate that. I think once we get motorcycles on the street, that's going to make a big impact with people, and so I'm looking forward to that. These no soliciting signs, thank you for doing that. I think that's going to be very helpful in our city, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of people that will want to take advantage of that. So that's exciting. The crime reduction program, obviously, this is something that I have tossed and turned about whether we keep it or whether we let it go and just do regular policing, just like any other, just like we do. And because we know that for some complexes that package theft has been a big problem. And to the point where that is what has pushed people or pushed complexes into the program. And so, I don't know whether we count that or not moving forward, but I think there needs to be a little more discussion about that. And I know it's been a big hot button for Councilman Rowland because he's been so involved with the apartments out on the west side. So I think we need to take a look at that one particular element, and then hopefully, as we have new complexes come into the city, our building standards will address a lot of this moving forward, because I believe we did revise and create some new standards for new units coming into our city. So I think we're on the right track there. just look forward to maybe having some additional dialogue
And
about.
we talked about that specifically with the apartment managers group. That was a concern that they brought forward. And so when we were looking at making a revision to the ordinance to try to address that, we looked at pulling them out or changing the way they're calculated. And in the previous iteration of this, the ordinance that currently exists, it wouldn't really change it for most apartment complexes. We looked at violent crime and changing, right now it's got a multiplier ×2. Of changing that multiplier to a ×1, didn't change anything. We looked at package thefts for a lot of apartment complexes, although it pushed them higher, it didn't take into account, it wouldn't have gotten them off the list. And again, a lot of that I think was the metric we were measuring against, because an apartment complex, they can have 200 packages delivered in a day versus your house that has one. And so the opportunity there for a disparate reporting is we had an issue came up, I think it was in December, where we had a delivery, Amazon delivery driver, I shouldn't say company names, we had a delivery driver from a certain organization that went to an apartment complex, unloaded all of their stuff into a common area and got off in their truck and drove off. And then right behind them on camera was a car who came in right behind them, opened up the back and picked all the packages up and threw them in the back of the car. Well, that's multiple theft reports because of the decision of one person. It really had nothing to do with the apartment complex.
Right.
So we looked at, if we removed that, what would it change? And we came up with this idea of, measuring that against the city, because that would count towards us like it would count towards the apartment complex, and not measuring them against an uneven metric. That's more of an incentive for us as the city to do better, to get that under control, and this is gonna count against us too. And so it gives us incentive to go out there and work with these complexes, or delivery drivers or companies that we're having problems with, to reach out to them and say, hey, you can help us out here, and plan a better delivery system, come up with better, and we kicked around a bunch of ideas to off-site delivery locations, to lockers at businesses, and they were all difficult challenges, either for the city or for the apartment complex. And I get it, they're in the business of trying to cater to their residents and saying, hey, you've got to go a mile down the street to get your package, is not what most people want to hear. So we did look specifically at package stuff, because I had heard that complaint repeatedly from the Apartment Managers Association. And this method seems to account for that equally for both sides. It still counts because it generates a crime report, because it impacts our crime rate as a city, but it measures it equally. It doesn't count more for them than it does for us. It counts it evenly, and the incentive on both sides to bring that theft under control.
Very good. Thank you.
So, Kevin, a couple questions just to reinforce some elements of the mandatory crime reduction program. Again, thank you, Councilman Roman, for being part of this discussion and helping drive it forward. How many apartments would have been in this program without the changes you're recommending?
16.
Okay, so that's where we're running into the issue of that redundancy, is they're doing everything we've asked them to do. That's why the apartments were frustrated as well. So Kevin went and looked at it, and this is approach we believe is a novel approach. We are going to have to bring this to council quickly though, because the program should be starting. What I didn't want to do is come to you and say, hey, we have 16 apartments enrolled in this. Yay, this is going to be fun. So we wanted to have a solution. We believe this is a good solution. It may not be perfect, but it's a step in the right direction. Sort of like with the noise ordinance. It's a step towards improvement. And so we will bring this to you quickly, because otherwise we will be forced to follow the ordinance. So since I know council's considering this, I can pause it, but we're going to need council direction relatively quickly on this one. We do believe this is a good solution for council to consider, and it checks the boxes of the intent of what we're trying to do. The other part, Kevin, can you move forward one slide, please, to slide 10?
Yes, sir.
Oh, sorry, you have to do it that way. So from the council, y'all have made public safety the #1 priority of the strategic plan, of the budget and emphasis. Sometimes it's tough to look at it because people still look at the roads and go, people are speeding, they're running stoplights, they're doing this, but we're going to take the emotion and assumptions out and revert to the data. Here's the data we're seeing. Is this the right direction for council's perspective? You've seen the different initiatives that are still to come online. Is there anything we're missing from the police department in alignment with our strategic goals? Are we on the right track? That's what I need to hear from this group. Is this the right pathway?
Yeah, I think they are doing everything they need to do. I'm just not certain that we have given them everything we need to give them. Well-lit streets, things that really aren't within their control, that maybe if we improved upon, that would positively add to this. Chief McCoy?
I was going to say earlier, it was an opportunity when you were asking about staffing, and then I was reflecting back on my partner, Fire Chief, when he began his presentation, he talked about 2 of them being up here versus 1, we work alone, they work with 2, and 2 is better than 1, I'm like, perfect, I need 80 more police officers, we'll write 2 officer units. I didn't think that would go over too well.
No.
But you know,
That's
it's the best
perspective.
fire chief, and it's a good idea, no. Not necessary in our world, it really isn't the way we do stuff, but, in the grand scheme of things, though, I think the city is on a great track. I mean, really, some of the things that are happening, not just on the public safety side, but on the public works side and the way things are going, it really is headed, I believe, the right direction from a crime standpoint. Slowing people down will help significantly, but our crime numbers are really, really good. Our crime against persons are way down, our property crimes are way down, which again is a reflection, I think, on the strength of the community, that we have a strong and growing community, and people are engaged and paying attention as part of what we do with pushing. Ashton has started Crime Tip Tuesday, of trying to get stuff back out in front of people when it was cold. Hey, I know it's fun to start your car, but don't leave your keys in it, because that's an opportunity. And a lot of our crimes are crimes of opportunity. We present opportunities for people to victimize us, and then we get shocked when they victimize us. And it's getting stuff out in front of people that says, hey, we're safe, but you can't leave your car running with keys in it. Your laptop and your pistol in your car while you're inside for just a minute is an opportunity for a criminal, not only to get your stuff, but to now harm themselves. And it's just reminding people to take steps. But the community has been very receptive to that. But all of the indications that I'm looking at and looking at crime across North Texas is the area in general that's headed in a good direction. Some other larger metropolitan areas have bigger issues, and that's good. We have our neighbor to the south. It's a pretty good barometer of where things are heading. If they're showing success in crime, chances are it will filter out to the Metroplex, because they drive a lot of what goes on in our cities. A lot of our crime is not our residents, it's people that are passing through our city. So, and so we'll watch that. But I would say from a city standpoint, I think we're on a great track. We're doing some really good stuff with public works and our parks and everything that are bringing people to town. It tends to make it seem like a great place to be, and then people want to come here, and they're not looking necessarily to victimize people when they do. And so it's been really good to see. From my standpoint, as I'm watching it, I'm looking at it with new eyes. I have knowledge of Farmers Branch from before when I didn't work here, and now here, and watching where the city's headed, and I think we're headed in a really good direction.
And then Councilwoman Burton, I believe it's also important to note that another council member has a focus area on neighborhood lighting on their list of perpetual topics to not be forgotten. So that is something that is on my radar as well as a member of council. So you notice that we used to be on future agenda items, but it was more of an interest area. So it's been moved to my internal document that I keep for all of you all on topics that we're not going to forget. And so neighborhood lighting is something not to be forgotten. That's on my list.
If I could give one more shout out, our code team is doing a really good job. They're really engaging in a great way with the residents. I mean, you're seeing them at our events and things, showing up and active, not just in response, but proactive engagement with the community, and that's huge. That they don't see code enforcement as a threat, they see them as a partner, and that helps all of us with issues. It doesn't allow things to deteriorate to the point it becomes a criminal issue. So they're doing a great job.
Chief, thank you. And I would just take a second just to remind, I'm not sure that any of you all, David, you might have seen or recall back when Chief Hale was here, they did had the professor from UNT who did an audit basically of our police department, and there was a schedule for growth of officers. As our population grows, well, we're going to need to staff for that. And so I know you know how to handle that, and one of the best ways of knowing whether we need more officers is when we see these numbers change. But I think the first and most visible thing that we can do to stop a lot of crime in our city is by slowing traffic down. And the motto, don't speed in Farmers Branch, that's a real motto. And we're working to bring that back. That was something I ran on. And to see these numbers, the increase in traffic stops, whatnot, that will have an effect. And we are going to slow traffic down in this city. And I can't tell you how many residents have said thank you because they see that our officers are out there and they're everywhere. Well, they're not everywhere, but they are everywhere for all intents and purposes, and that's all that matters.
Chief Siegel sent me that report, and I sent it to the city manager several months back. The staff projection that they did from North Texas, and we're actually pretty much right on top of it. So, we managed over time to actually fall within the parameters of what that was recommending. So, I was surprised to see that we actually landed really close to what they were saying we should be at from a population, from a crime, from a staffing standpoint. It actually hit pretty close.
Anybody else have any questions for the chief? No? Thank you, Chief.
All right, thank you, Chief. Great presentations by the fire chief and police chief, very proactive. Mayor, I was gonna say, if this okay with you, I was gonna say if we could look at our calendar or our agenda and make a suggestion and see if that would meet with your approval.
Well, okay, I was gonna suggest maybe a 5-minute break.
Well, we're, take a break. Lunch looks like it's gonna be ready. If we want to take a break, grab lunch, we could go ahead and start and continue the presentations. Is that met with your approval, sir?
We can do that.
Okay, let's take a break. We'll start back about 11:35. Thank you.